I'm Isabella Logan. I'm a digital accessibility specialist here at Accessible Web. And today I'm going to be presenting the webinar from cart to checkout, optimizing e-commerce for every shopper. So a quick agenda of our webinar today. First, we're going to be talking about e-commerce user flows. Then I'll talk about accessibility considerations for product filters, product images, product customization features, checkout flows, and then key accessibility strategies. So to start off, I'm going to identify a few key user flows and then show the importance of accessibility in each step. We have product filtering, the product details page, the product customization features, so selecting sizes, things like that, and then your checkout field, so entering your billing and shipping info as long as your credit card information. So this is the importance of accessibility within each step. With your product and filtering and product details page, the impact it has is that if a user can't find the product that they're looking for, they'll most likely abandon the site and stop the e-commerce process there. Within the product customization stage, if the user cannot change product customization to fit their needs, they might decide just to not buy the product. For example, if the customer is buying a pair of shoes and they can't select the correct size of shoes when using assistive technology, they'll likely just not order the pair of shoes. And finally, the checkout fields, having poor error identification and the inability to enter data in the form fields will cause users to end the checkout process. Not allowing the user to enter the data they need to enter will cause the user to just simply not order the product. So this is going to be a really high level overview of different key accessibility considerations for these parts of the process. Um, yeah, we can go more in depth in future webinars if anything really piques your interest, so let us know. But yeah, so for the product filters page, for two key components I see a lot that tend to have accessibility issues when I'm doing my auditing. So starting off, we have these hide and show filters. You can see here in the image on the right hand side, we have three filter categories: gender, kids, and color. Each one of them have an up and down caret symbol. When the user clicks on it, it can be expanded to show more information, or if they click on it again, it can be hidden to take away that information and declutter the page. So, another key aspect of these is that they use the headers to differentiate what each show and hide is used for. And because of this, we're going to be trying to follow a design pattern called an accordion. An accordion conveys the assistive technology that by closing one heading, it will close the information and the information under it will no longer be visible, but opening it will show that information again. So an accordion is a design pattern for the ARIA design patterns, and if you want to find out how to implement it correctly, I recommend going to the ARIA design pattern website and learning more about it there. So with our color selection tools, in this example, we have three colors that are available in the filtering: purple, black, and red. In this example, we have two that are checked, purple and black, and red is not checked. Because of that, the user is allowed to select multiple colors to filter by. So in this example, I would recommend using checkboxes. It's going to convey to assistive technology that multiple can be selected and that there's a clear on and off state for each component. Again, go to the ARIA design patterns guide and you can learn all about checkboxes and how to properly label them. Another important part of a color selection filter is ensuring that color is not the only way to visibly tell these apart. So as you can see here, you have the purple, black, and red. They have visible labels under them telling the user, hey, this is the purple one, this is the black one, this is the red one. But if that isn't there, and the user has to rely on color to figure out which ones they're sorting by, that is going to cause a use of color failure. So make sure you have a way to differentiate the colors. Most commonly, this is going to be done by one of these visible labels under the color telling the user what color we're filtering by. Next, we're going to go over some product images. I would say product images and having Descriptive alternative text is one of the key failures I tend to see on e-commerce websites. Product images should be coded as meaningful and should have descriptive alternative text. Here's some tips I have for writing product image alternative text. First, I would focus on what the unique features of each picture is. It's really common for images to be contained in an image carousel where these product images you go through and you can see different angles, different uses of the product. Make sure that unique features are mentioned in the alternative text. Think about what's the important information being gained by the photo, and then why was this photo chosen in the first place? There's a lot of decisions being made when you're making your e-commerce site. What visually were you deciding, hey, this is what this photo is conveyed, this is why we need to include it on the site, include that on the alternative text. For example, we have two pictures of wallets on this right-hand side. The first one shows the wallet in a closed state, and the other one shows the wallet in the open state. For the photo of the wallet in the closed state, I would probably go and explain things such as color, material, size, things like thickness that you can tell by this image. In the open state, I would really focus on things like the number of pockets, having a clear ID holder, things like that, which are going to be meaningful to the user and would help them make a decision on if they want the product or not. I'll also add in that image carousels have a lot of room for accessibility, and we have a webinar about image carousels that I recommend going and watching. I can get a link to that and link it to you guys later if that works out. But I recommend watching that if you're implementing a product carousel into your e-commerce site. So next, we're going to be going through a few common product customization options we see. The first one is going to be a color selection option. So in this example, we have three different colors of shoes that the user can select from. The first color is white, then there's a pink pair, and then there's a brown pair. The user has the ability to select one of these colors for their shoe. So by selecting one color, it deselects the other colors. So currently it's selected on white, but if I press pink, it's going to deselect white. So it's important to convey this programmatically to the user that by selecting one option, it's going to deselect another. So that's why we're going to be using something called a radio group with radio buttons, and that's going to be another one of those ARIA design patterns I recommend you look into. So this is just, again, going to communicate programmatically that when you reach a radio group, it's expected that selecting one option is going to deselect other options. So it helps assistive technology understand what the form is used for and how to operate it. Another common one we see in product customization is going to be your size selection tools. So in this example, we have a select button with a down arrow button, a down arrow icon in it. When the user selects that, it opens up a list of options, and the user is allowed to select one option from that list. So if this is a common design pattern we see, and that's a select, it's going to let users know that opening up this button is going to show you a list of options and that you can select one. So again, that is going to be programmatically shown to the user versus just visually by using the select design pattern. And the next most common one I see a lot is going to be your quantity selection tool. So this we usually have a minus button, a text box where you can enter in a number value, and then a plus button. So because of this, we're going to be using a design pattern called the spin button. This will just communicate to users that by using the plus and minus button, it will change the number in the middle, and it will also show the rule programmatically of how they're all communicated together and how they're all related. So I would recommend following the ARIA design pattern for a spin button. Again, this is a really high level overview, so I recommend looking more into this in depth on how to implement them onto your page. Sweet. Now we're going to be talking about the checkout process. So this is about your form fields. So this is going to apply to both like credit card information that you have to enter, address information, as well as any other personal information that you're doing during checkout. So first off, I would make sure that all of your form fields have accessible names. So this is going to be done usually for the ARIA label attribute. So this is going to ensure that the form field you see visually and relationships that you can see visually is also communicated programmatically to the user when they're typing in a form field. So for example, we have this first name field right here. If there wasn't an accessible name typed to it when a user of assistive technology arrived at that field, it would just say text field. They wouldn't know what it's used for. So it's important to have accessible names in the field. So when assistive technology users can get to the field, they'll say, okay, this field is for first name. I'm going to enter in a first name. Next is that all fields must have persistent visible labels. It's another common issue I see. So for example, on this side, we have the placeholder text first name, and then above it, we have the text first name. I oftentimes see form fields where they only have placeholder text as their visible label. So then when the user starts typing into the field, there isn't a visible label associated with it. So you need to have a persistent visible label so when the user is typing into the field, they also know what the form field is used for. Next is that required fields must be conveyed visually and programmatically. In this example, we have the first name, last name, email, and phone fields. The first name, last name, and email fields all have asterisks next to them, meaning that they're required, and the phone field doesn't have an asterisk, meaning that it is optional. So it's communicate visually to the user that those fields are required, but also it needs to be conveyed programmatically, and this is going to be done by the required attribute equals true on your text field. That's very important. So this would just let users know while they're going through assistive technology that that form field is required. And the last one is going to be all form fields must have their appropriate autocomplete attribute. So autocomplete attribute you add on to your text box in your code, and this will just tell assistive technology when they get to that field that it's one of a list of common form field types that have an autocomplete attribute. For example, the email field should tell the user, hey, this is an email field. Let's put the autocomplete attribute for email on it. So when the user comes, it will autocomplete with email, telling users, hey, you know, this is used for email. We already put in your email for you. So that's a very brief explanation of autocomplete values. It gets a lot more in depth. So next we're going to be going with error identification. So first off is all errors must be conveyed to the user in text. So in this example, we have an email field which is required, but it is currently empty and the user tried to submit the form and it says this field is required. So this is conveyed to the user in text what the error is. This field is required. If the you submit the form and it just said error, that would be a failure because the user doesn't know which form field it's associated with and what the error is. This also must be programmatically associated with the form field where the error is. That is just going to be done through a programmatically related instruction. And then finally, there must be information on how to fix the error provided. For example, in this case, they didn't enter email in the email field and the email is required, so that is a failure. Another common one we'll see with email fields is if somebody enters the email in the incorrect format, the error must provide a suggestion on how to enter the email in the correct format. We see that quite often. So you can't just say, invalid email, you have to say invalid email must follow the email at email.com format. Just provide the user with a suggestion on how to fix the error that they have on the field. And then finally, we're going to be talking about testing for an accessible user flow. So these are some key steps that can be done in the design process to ensure that you have an accessible product. So first, I would make sure that your whole product shopping process can be accomplished using keyboard alone. This can take a minute to get used to, but if you navigate a website, you can use the tab key on your computer and it will take you to each interactive component on the website. And you should be able to interact with those components using the arrow keys or using the enter button. It can take a bit to get used to, but it is a really good way of seeing if assistive technology can operate your website like a mouse would. So I would make sure that the key processes we found can be accomplished this way, so such as finding a product, customizing the product, adding the product to the cart, and then checking out. That's going to put you in a really solid spot in terms of accessibility. Next, I would try and listen to it using a screen reader. This will help make sure that all labels are associated correctly programmatically with the form fields and that users can complete the process in a way that makes sense. And finally, I would also involve users of assistive technology in your design process. Just because something meets WCAG doesn't mean it's definitely like necessarily going to be the best, most accessible user experience. So involving your actual customers who use your product and making sure that their checkout process is accessible is going to be a great way of making sure you have an accessible product that people can use and that you have repeat customers who enjoy using your website. So that is a very, very quick overview of e-commerce accessibility. So how can accessible web help? We have web accessibility software. So these are tools that automate and facilitate continuous compliance with updated accessibility standards. We do accessibility audits. So these are going to become comprehensive evaluations of your web and mobile applications to identify compliance gap with WCAG 2.2 level AA. We also provide information on how to fix the errors you run into. We have consulting and training, so we have expert guidance and training sessions on implementing and maintaining accessibility standards. And we also offer voluntary product accessibility templates, most commonly known as a VPAT. This is a document on how your technology meets accessibility standards and is usually involved in procurement processes. Sweet. So that has been the webinar for today. Please let us know if you have any questions or comments.